everyone, I'm JP.
And I'm CP, and welcome back to our realm. So, we're going to do something a little bit different this time. If you remember earlier, we did a review of Spider-Man, and we called it like a freestyle review. We're going to do this a little bit differently. This is, I guess you could call it a freestyle review, but it's somewhere more in between a review and a discussion. Something of note is that TJ is actually not with us this week. He's out in Georgia seeing some family, so it's just me and JP. Yep. And, this is basically just going to be us talking about the movie we just saw, which, if you read the title, was War for the Planet of the Apes. And, this is going to be a spoiler discussion. We're not going to do a spoiler and no spoiler discussion, just because, this is a little bit different than a normal setup anyway. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. And you have been warned, this is going to have spoilers, so go see this really awesome movie that's definitely worth your money. I'll say that much up front.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then come back and, listen to what we have to say about it and join the conversation in the comments. Alright, so let's just open up with our ratings. Get that out of the way.
Alright.
What do you got, JP?
This movie, it hits home for me. This whole series of films really has hit home for me in general. But this one, I say, is the best one out of all of them. I'm going to have to give it a 9 out of 10, personally. I'm not sure, but you're going to give it?
Well,
you're a little bit more cynical.
Actually, I'm actually going to agree with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm going to also be giving it a 9 out of 10. And we do have a history with these films. I've seen all three in the theaters.
Same.
And I'm a big Planet of the Apes fan. Anyway, I grew up with the movies, all of them, not just the original one with Charlton Heston.
You're old.
I've watched all of the original 5. And I even have a guilty pleasure for the Tim Burton version. Don't shoot me. I know it's a horrible film. But anyway, regardless, the point is I love the series, and I love what this series has done with it. And it is true that this movie ends it in such a good way. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of good stuff with this film. So I am going to give it a 9 as well.
Right off the bat, though, it
just kind of goes.
Yeah, it goes out. It comes out of the gate running.
Yeah, running on all cylinders. So let's go ahead and kind of break down the film, how it opens up. We start off seeing a group of like soldiers, and one thing I really love about this opening scene is that it calls back to the opening scene of the first movie of Rise for the Planet of the Apes. The opening scene in that movie, you see a bunch of apes running around, or kind of walking nervously in the forest, being hunted by some humans, and this scene kind of mimics that. It mirrors it, only in place of the apes, there are humans now walking around in the forest, all nervous and unsure what's going to happen.
Yeah, like wild animals.
Yeah, and they actually wind up getting caught ultimately by the humans. They start off attacking the apes, and then the apes kind of retaliate and really wind up trapping them in a way. You'd have to see the film to kind of know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But if you have seen the film, you do know what I'm talking about. Like, that big swarm of apes just comes in on horseback and, captures these soldiers.
One of the best moments in the film.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And it set the tone for the whole thing. Or
yeah.
It set the, I guess, better term would be the pace for the whole thing. The whole film has a lot of awesome scenes like that. So, Caesar in this film,
the best he's been in any of the films.
Yeah. He's totally, fully developed here. Caesar is honestly kind of a little scary in this film. And it's interesting because you see him in the other two films, and he's like this,
noble leader.
He's like the kind, noble-hearted leader, the one who wants peace. He's like in the middle ground the whole time, trying to find, a good, livable situation for everybody. And in this film, he's not really like that. In this film, he spends a lot of it just angry. And,
revenge.
Yeah, like vengeful, angry Caesar. Again, we are talking spoilers here.
Yeah.
So, I'll just say it out of the gate. They kill his son. They kill Blue Eyes and his wife. Yeah, they kill Blue Eyes. They kill Cornelia. Pretty much at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
It kind of shattered me, to be honest with you. I'm sitting in the theater like, they killed Blue Eyes. How could they kill Blue Eyes?
I was sitting there with this, they're gonna kill him off at some point in the movie. But I was not expecting right after he was introduced.
Honestly, that's kind of one of the things that I
maybe there was a deleted scene.
Well, no, it's possible. It's one of the things that I do kind of wish was one of the problems with the movie. I'll say, because again, this is an awesome movie, great film. You should definitely see it. But one of the problems is that it doesn't really explore a lot of the side characters a whole lot.
Yeah, like the gorilla, Kula, Luca, like.
And I only caught that because I was paying attention to the subtitles.
I was paying attention to the subtitles. Like this,
well, you were in the bathroom.
Oh, I know. I heard the name whenever Caesar was talking.
Yeah, but still, but that's the thing, is that it's easy to kind of have those moments sort of miss. I mean, Caesar gets a lot of development here. Caesar gets a lot of attention.
Caesar and Maurice, Rocket.
Well, not even though. Like,
well, Maurice did.
Really, yeah, pretty much only Maurice. Rocket, I actually wish that Rocket had gotten some more time to shine. I mean, he did do some cool stuff. I mean, there's a part where the apes eventually do get captured by the humans, and they're basically in what is totally not supposed to be a concentration camp. Yeah, it totally is a concentration camp. And he gets himself caught in there, like, on purpose, and basically plans an escape with Caesar. So he gets a cool little moment, but the gorilla Luca that you've seen in all the advertisements, yeah, he dies like pretty much. He does like one thing. He sort of establishes like a very small connection with the human girl, and then he dies right after that. So he doesn't get a lot of attention either.
I noticed that. I noticed that in these movies, the gorillas never have much character development.
Like, I know,
Buck,
right?
I think his name was in the first one.
Buck was in the first movie. He died pretty much immediately.
Winter in this one.
I was actually kind of disappointed by Winter.
I know he was a white gorilla. That
I know,
cool.
right?
He stands out.
I was hoping that he would maybe get to be a bit better than what he was. And again, if I'm assuming that you've seen the movie,
yeah,
if you're watching this, so I'm assuming that you're following us. But Winter, I assume I wish that he had been able to be more than just the traitor. But at the same time, I also get it. Like, I understand why those characters are there. It's because that way you can have characters that everyone likes, like Maurice and Rocket, and not have to kill them off.
Yeah.
If you develop up the gorilla the way that you did to these guys, I feel like everyone would be really hesitant to kill the gorilla. And so, even though I would have liked to see, like, we're talking about this, like, they're like, oh, I would have liked to see, like, a bit more like women characters or black characters. Like,
I don't like I just want to see more character development.
I know it's interesting how we're talking about that, but that plays to one of the strengths of this movie and really this whole series, this whole little trilogy, is that it makes these apes kind of like real
humans.
People. Yeah, it makes them very real.
Well, sentient, I should say.
Yeah, enough to the point. Yeah, exactly. It makes them real enough to the point where like you are thinking like, man, they don't show enough of the gorillas. I want more gorillas to show up. Again, the same way that you would be maybe thinking about, I want more women actors, or I want more black actors, or more minorities, or whatever. It kind of sticks out that the gorillas always die. But again, like I said, I would have liked it if the characters had gotten a little bit more development, particularly for me, the villain.
Oh yeah, what was his name? The Colonel?
I just call him the Colonel. He didn't really have...
I'm just going to call him Colonel Sanders.
No, yeah, let's call him Colonel Sanders. Fine. Because he was literally just called the Colonel the entire time.
At least I don't think they gave him a name.
I didn't hear any normal name
Neither
for him.
did I.
Yeah, like not even the humans were calling him like Colonel...
Where's the Colonel?
Yeah, they were just calling him the Colonel, so... But anyway, he didn't get a lot of development. I thought it would have been really cool, and what I was expecting going in, I was expecting there to be a moment, or like a lot of sort of like cutting between Caesar and Colonel Sanders, and kind of showing a little bit of like duality, maybe like here's how the protagonist and the antagonist are similar, even though it's a revenge story, and we get a little
tiny bit when he describes what happened to his son,
and then again at the end.
Yeah. When Caesar tried, Caesar was gonna shoot the Colonel, but then he realized that, the
Colonel had been infected with the simian flu, and the simian flu has progressed to the point where it's like
makes them animals.
It basically turns them into animals. It makes so they can't talk. Which, by the way, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't going to talk about it.
We'll get back to that, but that was the only point where I was... And it worked. I will say I liked that scene. I was actually kind of gritting my teeth. I wasn't sure if Caesar was going to shoot him, or if he was just going to let him go, or if he was going to bring him with him. Yeah. Actually, I half expected him to bring him with him. Like, be like, okay, let's escape. And and that didn't happen. Obviously, he shot himself in the end.
Because he couldn't bear,
Be
an animal.
Yeah, but that was the only moment that had any kind of real development for Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders could have been a lot more interesting. I really do wish we had gotten to see a little bit more of his backstory. We didn't see him for a long time.
No, well, we saw him when he killed his
The
wife.
very beginning.
But then, like, it took him like 45 minutes to even show up again.
Longer than that.
You
I think at least 45 minutes.
When I went to the bathroom, I checked it. It was about an hour in.
Okay, so yeah, maybe about another 45 minutes before he even shows up again. And
yeah,
he goes through basically half the movie without uttering a line.
Yeah,
and then the first thing he does is he goes into that dramatic speech that you've heard in the trailers, where he's like, the ironic thing is we created you.
All of human history has led to this moment. The irony is we created you, and nature has been punishing us ever since. This is our last stand, and if we lose, it will be a planet of apes.
That's like basically his first bit of dialogue is that whole speech. I will say it feels a little unearned.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, though, the cool thing about these movies isn't really the human characters.
It's the ape characters.
Yeah, it's the apes.
It's the main focus of it, which is fine.
We come here for the apes. We're rooting for the apes. I don't necessarily... honestly, the whole time, I think... I'm pretty sure I was supposed to be. The whole time, I was just rooting for the apes. I was not rooting for the humans.
Yeah, no.
At all.
No. Like, they tried to make the humans look as bad as they could.
Which is a bit of a contrast compared to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, where they tried to make it a little bit more, middle of the road.
Well, we're supposed to be seeing it through Caesar's eyes.
I guess, yeah. And if Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was a peace movie, then this is definitely a war movie. So
yeah,
you
definitely.
wouldn't be focusing on compromise and realizing that both sides have their have their points, you know. But yeah, there were a lot of cool allusions drawn to the original movie. Which, by the way, we said we were going to get back to the simian flu, making the humans mutes. That's really cool because
it gives an explanation why they can't speak anymore from the first movie. Well, from the very first iteration of it.
Something I do want to mention, just real quick, by the by. Some people seem to think that these movies are like a prequel series to the original films, and they're not. They straight up are not. Or if they are, then it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
Because in the original, there were 5 original films, not just one. Not even just 2. Some people seem to know about only those 2, and then the other 3 are just kind of forgotten.
Left by the wayside.
Well, they're not the best films, if I'm completely honest. But anyway, they did their origin story. At one point, in the original 5, the apes actually go back in time to modern day, and we actually see how the ape society kind of came to be and how the apes rose
Caesar.
up. Yeah, the character of Caesar is actually in those original films.
The son of Cornelius and Zero.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was right. Cornelius and Zero.
Yeah.
So no, this is not a prequel. This is not an explanation series to that. This isn't supposed to be like, and then 1,000 years later we see Cornelius and Zero. But some people seem to have that misconception, so I really want to try and clear that up as much as I can here.
Yeah.
This series is not supposed to be a prequel series. That said, though, it is true that that was always a plot hole. Even the movies, like the original film, admitted that it was a plot hole.
Well, it was originally based off of books, wasn't it?
It was originally based off a book.
A book.
Yeah, a book. I might be wrong about this, so don't shoot me. But it was originally based off of a book. And then it was a successful movie, and it had all these illusions. It was talking about philosophical stuff, humanity, all this stuff that was really popular in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So they decided, okay, well, it's a successful movie, let's go ahead and make 4 more. And they just kind of got more and more ridiculous as they went. I still love those movies, by the way.
The fourth one is my favorite one of the originals. In my personal opinion.
The further that those old films went, and the more they tried to explain, the more they actually wound up messing up
the series.
Well, because it just didn't make any sense at one point in those old films. But we're not talking about those.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that like they managed to address that here, whereas the old films never did. So in a way, these new films are actually kind of better than the old ones. At least
by far.
I mean, at least the third, fourth, and fifth of the originals. So there were a lot of great allusions drawn to the original, as usual. All these films draw allusions to the originals. One really awesome allusion sort of callback, I should say, not illusion, callback to the originals.
Nova.
Is Nova. Yes, I love how they did it. They find a little girl who's infected with the simian flu. She can't talk. She's basically a little pet human
for
animal.
Maurice.
Yeah, pretty much. She's obviously intelligent enough to actually think though and communicate. She just, she
can't speak.
Yeah. But she does learn sign language,
yeah.
And at one point, one of the new characters who comes in, which we'll talk about him later. He gives her like a little a piece of a car, a Chevy Nova, and
this is why
she's like she keeps it because it's like shiny and everything. Later on, she asks Maurice if she's an ape. She asks him in sign language. And there's this beautiful, amazing scene that just had me geeking out in the theater. Maurice pulls out, he just says in sign language, "You are," and then he pulls out the little car ornament that says Nova, and then he says it exactly like this, Nova.
He actually speaks.
Well, no,
he?
Yes, he does. But the beautiful thing about that is that it is exactly the same as a scene in the original film with Charlton Heston talking to the original Nova, where he does it the exact same way. He's trying to teach her how to say her... Or, no. It's in the second film.
Yeah.
He's trying to teach her how to say her name. Well, actually, I think it's actually in both of those films. Anyway, he's trying to teach her how to say her name, and he says it's the exact same way. Like, pointing at her and everything, and I geeked out because just... I don't know, that much attention to detail in trying to kind of honor and respect the original source material, it made me kind of geek out and squeal on the inside. So
I'm so happy that they actually gave Maurice a speaking line.
Yeah, I kind of wish that Rocket had gotten one.
Me too, but it makes sense for Maurice.
Yeah.
Because he was the one who taught Caesar sign language. He was the first one to... He was actually able to communicate.
You might even be able to argue that Maurice is actually more intelligent than Caesar.
Yeah. But he's orangutan. They normally are.
And then he got it oomphed by the, by that gas in the first
Yeah,
one.
it makes sense for him to actually know how to speak, but... Maybe he just wanted to, stay connected to his old self. That's why he did
I wouldn't
stuff.
really even say that. I think it's what he... I think of it almost as like a second language. You know what I mean? Like his tongue, or his language that he speaks is sign language, and regular human speech, like mouth speech, is a language that he learns secondarily.
Yeah.
So it would kind of be like having someone who speaks Spanish initially and then English, they learn as a second language. I guess maybe they would want to speak Spanish more often when they can because it's just what they know better.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah, okay, so there is the new ape. Again, I kind of wish that this character had gotten explored a little bit more. His name is Bad Ape, and he's like, you've seen him in the trailers. He's from...
That's his name?
Yeah, that is his name. He's from a zoo where, like, they would always say to him, Bad Ape. Right? But he eventually learned how to speak by listening to them, and he just kind of took on that name, Bad Ape. Yeah. And he's funny. He's there to be the comic relief. I kind of feel like he could have done more.
Definitely.
I feel like he could have been a more interesting character. It kind of just feels like they legitimately just ran into him and he kind of just joined the adventure, you know?
Yeah, little buddy trip.
Pretty much. He helps them all escape in the end, but really that was more of Maurice and Rocket
Yeah.
than it was him. He was really just there to be the silly comic relief character, and I get why they included that. But there's even a point where they mention that he has a son, and that he was hoping that, like, he didn't want to, like, they were trying to get him to lead them to the military encampment.
Military stronghold.
Yeah, it was like a military encampment, where they were keeping apes as, like, imprisoned, and where they were also killing any infected humans they can get their hands on.
Yeah.
And he refused to take him back there at first, but then Caesar convinced him that they might find his son, that he, I guess, has, and that is the last time that they mention that this character has a son or had a son. It's a plot point that a thread that just doesn't really develop or go anywhere.
It doesn't get developed.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's something that I kind of wish they had explored more. Again, that's probably the biggest flaw with this movie, is that it doesn't explore its side characters as well as it could. But I get it, because this is Caesar's story. This isn't Maurice's story. This isn't Rocket's story. In a lot of ways, Caesar almost feels like a biblical character.
Well, he's supposed to be in the lore.
Yeah, like, as far as the apes would be concerned, he's like their Abraham,
Abraham, or even really,
maybe King David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
King Caesar.
If you know
the Bible.
The Bible.
The Bible. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, and that's just really cool to look at, to see, like, to kind of look at this whole story, and imagine it being written down in some kind of sacred text and being read like a couple hundred, maybe even a couple thousand years later, and to kind of picture it in your head as it would probably be described or seen by, apes, people, whatever, who would see it in the future. That's just a cool thing to think about. So here's something.
What about the donkey, the gorilla?
Okay, yeah, he was a cool one that got explored a little bit more.
He was the only gorilla that actually got explored more.
Yeah,
than,
I mean,
than Luca.
again, Winter did, but Winter was basically just there to be a traitor.
Yeah, that was the only point of him. He was
Yeah.
a coward, and he wanted, to be alive at least.
Yep. Which was really weird, because, like, I don't really get why they did that. It feels like, I guess they probably didn't have enough time to show all this stuff, but it does feel like there was a lot of stuff happening on the sidelines with all these characters that just doesn't get, again, explored. And with Winter, that's another one. But yeah, Donkey was cool. I almost feel bad calling him that, because it was like a derogatory term. I mean, even like the way that they say it. So I should mention one of the plot points, or one of like the plot, one thing in the story is that there are some apes who had followed Koba.
10, I think it was.
There was a handful of apes that followed Koba, and they went and they fought on the side of the humans because they were afraid that Caesar was not going to take them back into the fold, because they followed Koba.
Yeah.
And it actually goes even further than that. Like, some of the apes were following the humans because they thought for sure that the humans would ultimately kill all of the apes and maybe let them live if they just went with it. And so the humans call them all donkey. They're donkeys to them, like Donkey Kong.
Well, no, they gave them different names.
No, they didn't. They called them all donkey. If you look, they all have the word donkey painted on their backs if they're like servant apes.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they were all called donkeys. At the beginning of the film, they even say, like, our donkeys just spotted something or whatever, and they're referring to the apes that are working with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the way that they, like, I almost feel bad calling him that, but that's the only name we got for him. But it's almost like saying, like, the N-word, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
for them.
Yeah.
They even say it like that. Like, they'll be like, donkey, get over here. I feel like Shrek. Donkey!
That's a nice boulder.
So, yeah, he was cool, and of course, in the end, he winds up
Saving Caesar.
Yeah, he winds up helping Caesar, which you sort of see that coming.
Yeah.
But this is what, like, honestly, with this movie, I just kind of tried to turn off my inner cynic, and just kind of be like, okay, let's let this kind of, suspend my disbelief a little bit and stop. Like, I tried not to think about it in terms of, here's how the story should work, and this was predictable and this and that, because I really wanted to just sit and enjoy the film.
But there was one part in there that you cannot disagree with me. When the little girl came walking up and gave Caesar food and water, and none of the guards noticed her.
We were just kind of laughing. There's this really funny scene, and it's also a great scene.
It's a great scene, but it's hilarious.
It's a pretty scene. It's a good scene. It makes sense, but it also doesn't, because the little girl Nova walks into the encampment and walks up to Caesar, who's in a cage, basically about to die. And she gives him some water, and then she walks the apes on the other side in another cage, on the other side of his cage, start hollering and telling her to give him food. She does, and she walks between the two cages to do it. And I'm just we're sitting there looking at it like, where are the guards during this?
They're the worst guards.
Well, we're just imagining some guard sitting up somewhere and looking at it and just seeing it happen, be like, I'm not getting paid right now, and just ignoring it.
And I don't know, that's probably one of the biggest flaws for me, at least, and that's saying something.
Well, I don't know if I call it an actual flaw.
Well, it's not a flaw, but it's funny.
Yeah, it's a silly little moment that you kind of don't really. I didn't suspend my disbelief for that one as much, but I get what they were doing with it. So let's talk about
Cornelius.
That's just another nice little allusion. Caesar's second son, the little baby ape from the first film, is named Cornelius.
Second film.
From the second film is named Cornelius. And again, if you know the first movie, you know that that's the name of one of the main characters, Cornelius.
Yes, and also his son in the fifth movie.
Yes.
Which is good that they kept that. It's good.
You're right. Actually, that's a good point. In the last of the original films, the Caesar from the original films had a son, who he also named Cornelius.
Yes.
So that's actually a pretty nice little thread there. I didn't catch that.
You didn't? How did you not catch that?
I was too busy geeking out over everything else. Ultimately, this was a really fun movie. I feel like this is one that pretty much anybody can relate with. And like I said, I have a pretty, I feel like a pretty strong connection with these films. I saw the first one in the theaters back in 2012. Man, I was 11. I was still in high school. Holy cow.
Then the second one came out
2014.
2014. Now we're here at 2017.
I'm wondering is if we're ever potentially going to get another trilogy taking place with the Apes Society. You know what I mean?
I think that'd be cool.
It would be cool
to have another movie with Cornelius learning to become a leader called The Building of Planet of the Apes.
Maybe.
Or something along those lines.
I like the idea better of it being maybe a couple 100,000 years in the future, something like that. A couple 100 or 1,000, not 100,000.
Yeah.
But a couple 100 or 1,000 years in the future, after
Caesar
the apes have
Cornelius.
the apes have already kind of been established and are building a kingdom. I would like to see that.
That'd be cool, but yeah. I don't know. I would like to see how Cornelius grows up to be.
I don't know. I mean, these characters are great. Don't get me wrong. I like Maurice. I like Rocket, and I it's so sad that Cornelius is the last of Caesar's line.
Well, yeah, because they killed Bright Eyes, which sucks.
Blue Eyes.
Blue Eyes. Sorry.
Yeah, Bright Eyes was his mother.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, anyway,
Caesar's death.
Yeah. Let's talk about Caesar's death. There were a lot of points in this movie where I was I kind of went into this
expecting he would die.
Yeah, I figured that Caesar would die.
Yeah, me too.
What I was afraid of is how they were gonna kill him.
I was afraid that they were just gonna have him have the bad guy shoot him in the back of the head when he was about to go grab his son,
and then maybe Donkey was gonna end up being the hero, the cool guy.
I was worried that they would completely botch his death, but I feel as though it was good.
Well, because there were so many times where he could have died. I mean, there were points where you thought for sure he was going to die.
Avalanche?
There were a lot of points. Yeah, well, hold up. We'll get to that. There were points where, like, he was being shot at. There was a point where he's in, like, just face-to-face, kind of Moses versus the Pharaoh style, just face-to-face with Colonel Sanders just in a room by themselves. Like, I thought for sure he was going to kill him or shoot him or something. There were points where, like, he's running around with fire everywhere, explosions everywhere. There's a point where a bunch of explosions happen right behind him, and he's running away, and he barely managed. Like, he literally rolls out of the way of an explosion and falls into a hole, then runs through the hole and manages to outrun an explosion underground. Then he stands in front of a huge human army, which, by the way, again, you've probably seen the movie if you're watching this. There was another human army that came to fight this human army, because in the end the apes aren't the ones who destroyed the human race. It's the human race destroyed itself in the end. There's just a human army that fights each other. There's a point where he's standing like right in front of this huge army, and they all point their guns at him. And then an avalanche comes and knocks them out.
Because of the explosion.
Yeah, and then the avalanche is chasing him, and he barely manages to outrun it. He runs up a tree. He runs up a tree, and he actually gets engulfed in the avalanche, and manages to hold on by the skin of his teeth onto that tree, and outlast the avalanche. Then they walk across. Oh, and by the way, he at one point he had gotten shot in the arm. He didn't
not in the arm.
In the rib, side. Like in the rib, in the like side, the lung. With like a crossbow bolt. And that was there that entire time. He's running around with that. They managed to cross a desert, get themselves to a new home, and only then, when he's actually managed to get his people, to their new home across the desert. And right then he dies, and I'm just assuming Maurice is their leader until Cornelius grows up. But
yeah, well, Maurice and probably Rocket will be the two main ones.
Well, they're probably going to help to kind of groom Cornelius.
Yeah, because they knew his father the best.
Yeah, and they were his like right and left hand. So yeah, the death was really it was good. There were a lot of points where he could have died and didn't, and then at the very end, he dies in this like sort of satisfying way. It feels like he's completed his purpose, but it's still sad to look at, because again, you think back to that first movie.
You see him as a little baby ape.
Yeah, like he managed to not get put down by veterinarians and get away from that. Oh, that's something I'll say, by the way. I am kind of like wishing that they had, and they did this a little bit in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but I wanted to see a little bit more here. The guy who raised Caesar in the first movie was like, I mean, that was basically Caesar's father figure, and he like
never
doesn't.
shows up.
Yeah, he never really thinks of him anymore, or like mentions him anymore. Well, it's kind of implied in the second film that he died.
Well, yeah.
And that makes sense if he got the simian flu and then died. But it's kind of sad, because I would have liked to see Caesar kind of have a moment where like he thinks back to the world as it was, and it's is looking at how different it is now. And again, I know we had this in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but I think it really would have made sense to have this in the last film, because things are so different now. And that's something that I would have liked to see a little bit more of. But his death scene was good. Caesar was developed well. And all of this movie's maybe shortcomings, I'd call it, considered, they're only shortcomings anyway because of how well they've managed to develop up each of these characters anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Rocket, despite not having a lot of dialogue in any of these movies, you like Rocket and you
don't want him to die.
Yeah. I was actually legitimately scared that Rocket was going to die at one point. I was glad that he didn't.
Well, I was scared that he was going to die on multiple points.
Yeah. Either way, like, you're glad that Rocket didn't die. You're glad Maurice made it.
Sad that Blue Eyes didn't.
Yeah. So all these movies do a very good job of developing up their characters, and as a result, we want to know more about them, and when they can't necessarily deliver on that, that stands out as a flaw. So it's only a flaw because of its strengths.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, like I said, movie gets a 9 out of 10 from me. JP agrees.
Yep.
Anything else you want to say?
I just hope that if they do continue with these movies, I hope that Andy Serkis comes back and, replies his role as the main character.
Or as just some kind of character, some central figure.
Like, yeah, because he's what made Caesar really good. Like, the whole entire movie, the CGI.
But yeah, that's something
was
to talk
one of
about.
is some of the best I've ever seen. Like, they move naturally, they look natural.
Yeah, they actually managed to make it look better than Dawn, which is crazy. Obviously, going into these movies, you kind of just know that these films, or that the computer generated stuff is going to be good, because that's what these movies are known for. This one really does push the bar. I mean, their eyes look real. Like, a lot of times when, especially, particularly with, eyes, eyeballs, with computer animated stuff, you can get a lot of uncanny valley with that stuff. Something about, it's hard to, I don't know, there's some element
Like the
to
reflection.
There's some element to it that makes them hard to make it, look realistic, but they managed to do it here. It looks really good. And, it's true, though, this is the best it's looked. So, it delivers on that. Alright, so, that was our sort of review, freestyle review, discussion thing.
First impressions.
I wouldn't even call it first impressions. I call it our freestyle, open discussion review of War for Planet of the Apes. We'll be back in our normal setup next week. Let us know in the comments if you like what we do here with this setup, and if you do, then maybe we'll just do it like this from now on.
Yeah.
Or, not. We'll see.
Yeah.
Either way, tell us if you've seen the movie. Tell us what you thought about it in the comments below. Let's get a nice little discussion going. Maybe see just what you thought of the film, and we'll have another video up for you next week. Until then,
I'm JP.
and I'm CP, and we'll see you next time
on our realm.